What's up, everybody, and welcome to a very special Q&A edition of the Slam Sessions right here on YouTube. This is the first time I've attempted to do one of these shows, and I think it was a good idea to reach out to you guys and kind of hear what you wanted my opinion on. I mean, I know that some of you guys know me from the Dave Knows Wrestling live stream, and for those of you who do, you get to pretty much almost weekly ask me questions about things that are going on. But if you guys are fans of this YouTube channel, I wanted you guys to have the opportunity to try and, to ask me anything you guys wanted. And I'm very happy that, you guys came through. So thank you to Donnie, Elizabeth, Andre, David, Craig, Jimmy, Matthew, Jesse. Thank you guys for your questions. Really appreciate it. Means a lot to me that you guys reached out and had questions for me, and I'm going to answer every question that was presented to me right now. But first, I just want to remind you guys that if you guys are watching this and you didn't get to ask me a question, that must mean that you must not follow me on social media, which means that you should go to Twitter. It's at KYDJustice. I put up a post there. You could have commented on that. You can, next time I do a Q&A episode, if this is something you guys like, make sure you go there and follow me and ask me questions there. Or Facebook.com/The Slam Sessions Podcast Network. That's where I pose this question as well. Most of my, I did it in a few of the groups that I'm in, so if you're in any wrestling groups with me, you probably saw the post there. So, yeah, next time, ask away. I'll do another Q&A episode, I'm sure, at one point. So, yeah, let's get started. So, the first question that came to me was from Donnie, and Donnie asked, should Daniel Bryan remain in his tag team with Rowan? So, obviously, you guys have seen that Daniel Bryan had a big announcement, and we didn't get to it yet, but, he and Rowan lost the World Tag titles, so there's a little bit of the unknown when it comes to the team of Rowan and Bryan. But Donnie posed a good question, should they go back to being a tag team? And personally, I don't think so. I like Rowan as being Bryan's heater. I like Rowan as being the guy who can assist Bryan and cheat for Bryan, but doesn't necessarily have to be his tag team partner. They can team up, sure, when Bryan needs backup, when a couple of guys maybe band together to try to take out Daniel because of some of the stuff he's saying or doing. It's possible that them working together in a tag team capacity could be beneficial, but right now I just don't think they need to be a tag team. I think Daniel Bryan is a main event player. He was a former World Heavyweight Champion. He had a great match against Kofi Kingston at WrestleMania. I think Bryan is great on his own, and I think that Daniel Bryan should remain as a single star from here on out. But thank you for the question, Donnie. I appreciate that. My next two questions come from Elizabeth, and Elizabeth, the first question she asked was, do you think that WWE Creative is going to need a complete regal of writers to get the WWE out of their current slump? See, a part of me is half and half on that. There's a part of me that thinks, yes, the WWE needs people to get them out of what they're dealing with right now. The thing is that I don't necessarily think that the WWE needs more writers to help them get out of that. I think what the WWE needs right now is the right writers. I think they need the right amount of people to come together and to pitch together, to pitch ideas and to write the show better than what they're doing right now. Now, with Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff in control, we might actually see that. But I think that when they have somebody at the helm like Heyman or Bischoff, I think it helps. But I think the right writers make the stories pop. Heyman can sit there and say, hey, let's have a segment with Braun and Lashley tonight. And, a challenge, Braun's back, he wants to do this, that's great. Just push that out. If the right writer takes that over, they'll kill it. If the wrong writer takes it over, well, then we know that it's not going to be successful. So I don't think they need more writers. I just think they need the right people. Elizabeth's second question was, which wrestlers do you feel are currently being severely underutilized? So this might not be the most popular answer to this question. Whether it is or it isn't, it is what it is. I mean, this is my personal opinion. She didn't ask for who everybody else thinks. She asked who I think, Curt Hawkins and Zack Ryder, right off the bat. pop into my mind. I think that their tag title run was lackluster. I think the win was great at WrestleMania, but then what did they do afterwards? You know, they're doing this whole new deal with the Gratitude Era. Let's see where it brings them. But I think they're two guys who are talented, who are good on the mic, who are good characters, who work very well together, that can be used as a top-tier tag team. I don't think they need to be a joke. I think they should be taken seriously, and I think that Ryder has been in the WWE for so long and has been used as some sort of like a, you know, almost like a joke character, you know, the whole woo-woo-woo thing, you know, he's been overlooked. And Curt Hawkins was always a good worker. He was always really talented. It just, he never seemed to connect with the audience. But after the losing streak, he actually did connect with the audience, and people actually wanted to see him break the streak, and he did at WrestleMania. But now, how do you book him after that becomes the question. And the answer is you keep booking him with Zack Ryder. And I think they're a good tag team. I think they can be utilized a lot better. Cesaro is starting to be utilized better, but I think Cesaro should be a main eventer. Just flat out, I think the guy should be in the main event. Samoa Joe's there. He was another guy who I would have said, if he wasn't, you know, being given these opportunities, could be underutilized. But Cesaro deserves to be a main eventer. Other guys that I think that are being underutilized, you know, you said severely underutilized. You know, it's a little bit hard because it's hard to find anybody who's severely underutilized, like underutilized to a point that they're not on TV and deserve to be, kind of a thing. Tyler Breeze comes to mind, but he went to NXT and now he's being utilized in a better way. A lot of tag teams, AOP, the B team, you know, the WWE used to have a very rich tag team division, and they actually do now. They need to get these teams on TV, and, you know, even if they're taking losses, at least they're being shown. Heath Slater's another one who's just entertaining. I used to not be able to stand Heath Slater, and now I want him back on my TV. So Heath's another one. Thank you, Elizabeth, for those questions. The next one comes from friend of the show, Andre Joseph. Andre asked, who else could have a compelling feud with Becky Lynch from the main roster and NXT? First and foremost, the first thing that pops into my head is Ronda Rousey. Rousey needs to come back. She needs to try to avenge her loss. I think that that's a big deal. I think that Becky and Ronda make a good feud. I think that they need to expound on that. I think that Becky needs to get another win over Ronda to even further accentuate how much she is the man, how much his character is taken off, how good she's turned out to be. Currently, right now, though, of the women that are on the main roster, I don't know. The Raw roster is, you know, the women's roster on Raw is a little lackluster right now. Sasha Banks can come back and have a compelling feud with Becky Lynch, but, you know, that's something that's a little bit rehashed. The one that I really think that I want to see is Shayna Baszler. I think Shayna Baszler should be the one who takes the strap off of Becky Lynch. I think Shayna Baszler is one of the best women's wrestlers in the world, period. And I think that if you're not thinking of bringing Shayna Baszler up to the main roster, I think at this point, I think it's crazy. Shayna Baszler is amazing, and she deserves that push, especially against Becky Lynch. And Andre also asked, do you think the AEW will bring back ice cream bars? Andre, I hope that AEW brings back ice cream bars. That'd be fantastic. But with, you know, the announcement that Kenny Omega had said in an interview that he wants to do an AEW video game, which already has been discussed, and he wants to do it with an updated version of graphics for the old school Nintendo 64 WWE No Mercy game. The sky's the limit for AEW at that point. AEW has a fan for life in me if they do either A, bring back the ice cream bars, or B, bring back the WWE No Mercy game. That's huge for me. I hope we get both. David asked, who do you think is the best wrestler in the company that came from the UFC or MMA? Two people just jump out in my mind immediately, and they're both on NXT. Shayna Baszler is one of them. I said she's one of the best female wrestlers in the world right now. She's fantastic. Her character work has gotten so much better. Her mic work has gotten better, and her in-ring skills are unparalleled to the women's division. So Shayna is like this weird size. She's bigger than a lot of other girls, and she's built, but she's not like overly like China built, but she's just presented, like her aura about her is just, she's a monster, and she's ready to throw down at any moment, and she can take anyone. I like Shayna Baszler. She's one of them for me. Another one for me is Matt Riddle. I think Matt Riddle is fantastic. I really wasn't the biggest follower of him when he was on the indies. I watched some of his stuff. In all honesty, a lot of people were highlighting Matt Riddle, and I was like, okay, let's see what this guy's all about. And when I finally got to looking at who Matt Riddle was, I went, ooh, this guy's got a good crossover appeal. I like him. He's got this submission style, but he's also a striker, but he can also fly. Matt Riddle can do everything, and I like that he's well-versed, and he's versatile, and he's well-rounded in everything he does. Matt Riddle, to me, is one of the more complete WWE superstars right now, and I think that when he comes up from NXT, nothing but big things for Matt Riddle, because I think he's got that good crossover appeal. So my next 3 questions come from Craig. The first one is, do you think the WWE should do a redraft of the entire roster before the new TV contract begins this fall? Yes. I think that they should do a redraft right now. I think they should ditch this wildcard rule. I think that Bischoff and Heyman should either A, appoint general managers, or B, be on-screen characters and come out and say, listen, I don't want your guys, I don't want my guys on your show, I don't want your guys on my show. You know, that's it. Simple as that. Let's do it. That's the way it's going to be. That's the way it is. Our guys stay here. If there wants to be a cross-branded match, it has to be cleared by both of us. But that's the only way anybody appears on it. Wildcard rule is done. Redraft it all. New feuds. And yeah, I'd also like to see them go to individualized pay-per-views again, because I want to see them build more stories. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I think that, the WWE pay-per-views now being, a new structure of 4 hours, and the ability to now tell a story from both sides makes them more, gives them more appeal. But I think that if you book the shows right, they're going to want to see individual brand pay-per-views, and I think if you book it right, you can do it that way. But yes, absolutely redraft the entire brand. It's what's needed. Number 2, he said, who else do you want to see feud with Bray Wyatt's new character? Aleister Black is the #1 choice at this point. Bray came out on Raw and attacked Finn Balor, who's a SmackDown guy, which means that Bray could be a SmackDown guy. That's what I think. It's possible. Maybe he's a Raw guy. Maybe he's one of these guys who doesn't exactly follow the wildcard rule. He just goes where he feels that he wants to go, and nobody can control him. And that'd be cool. I'm okay with the wildcard rule, but not in a sense of, hey, we have 2 separate shows, these guys can both show up. I like the idea of the wildcard rule being something that isn't said but can be executed. But like, Bray's the only guy who can do it, because nobody can control him to tell him, don't go there. What are they gonna do, threaten to fire him? He's the Fiend now. He's got all these different character arcs and different gimmicks. Undertaker and Kane used to shoot lightning bolts out of their hands and stuff like that. I'm sure they can come up with some sort of weird storytelling with Bray Wyatt for that, and that's why he doesn't get punished. But Aleister Black is the #1 guy I want to see go against Bray. I think that his ideologies and stuff really would make an interesting feud for Bray Wyatt. Other than that, I think that I'd like to see Luke Harper come back and be a big feud for Bray Wyatt. I think that'd be a good launching off point. I'd like to see Bray revisit some stuff that he's done with Daniel Bryan, because they worked really well together in the past, and especially this new trim, jacked Bray Wyatt. I think he's going to be even better and more explosive in the ring, and I'd love to see him in matches with guys like Balor and Styles. Guys like, we're going to see him against Finn, guys like Rollins, a guy like Aleister Black. I think he'd be really good. Bray would be really good for that. And finally, Craig asked, why won't Peyton or Billy return my calls? Craig, I can go on for a long time with this question. Peyton's probably not, because she just got back from her bachelorette party. She'll be marrying AEW's Shawn Spears, formerly known as Ty Dillinger. So that may be why Peyton won't call you back. Billy, I don't know. Maybe she's a little busy. Maybe she's seeing somebody and we don't know. But she is pretty iconic, so she might be a little busy. Maybe text. Maybe if you text, it may be a little bit easier to get a response. That's my suggestion. Thank you, Craig. If I didn't say it already, Andre, Elizabeth, David, Donnie, thank you guys so far for your questions. You guys are amazing. We got a couple of more. My boy Jimmy, Jimmy Trunks, who is amazing. He made the logo for this channel. So, big shout out to Jimmy, and a big thank you to Jimmy for contributing to this channel before it even got started. I've had this logo for a little while, and I'd used it for a little bit once I launched the YouTube channel. It was a no-brainer. I love my logo. It's one of my favorite things about my channel, and not only did Jimmy do that, but he asked 1, 2, 3, 4 really good questions. So we're going to dig into that. With Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff eras, with the Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff eras on their way for Raw and SmackDown, who would you like to see get a shot at the Universal or WWE Championship that hasn't yet? For me, I'd really like to see Cesaro down the line get a shot that I think he should have had a long time ago. Jimmy took the words right out of my mouth. Cesaro probably is one of the first guys that comes to mind. The fact that Cesaro hasn't been in a high-profile world title match yet is criminal. Another guy who hasn't been in that sort of a match, and I think that's crazy, is Luke Harper. Guys who are very similar. They're big guys. They can both move. They're both very deceptively strong for their size, and they're both deceptively agile for their size. Harper and Cesaro are both main event talents in my mind. I think that if they give Harper the opportunity to cut a passionate promo, he can definitely pull it off. And I think Harper could be a really good big guy babyface. Cesaro, there's nothing more that can be said about Cesaro. He's amazing. The man's a beast, and he deserves to be a main eventer. Other guys I'd like to see get world title shots are Aleister Black, Rusev. I'd like to see him get I don't know if he's been in a world title match yet, but if he hasn't, Rusev deserves it as well. So those are the guys that I would pick. And other guys, you know what? So the WWE used to do this thing where they would take world champions and they put them in the ring with guys who are, mid-card guys. And I think that, it was fun to see these mid-card guys put up a challenge. And that's what John Cena did with the U.S. Open Challenge. But I think they should do that with the world champions a little bit more. Have guys like AJ Styles is the U.S. champion. Brock Lesnar, if he ever wrestles on Raw. And Kofi Kingston wrestle guys like Zack Ryder. Guys like... trying to think of some guys who are really stuck more into a mid-card. Ricochet, Bobby Roode, Aleister Black, I guess you can kind of put him in that company too. These are guys who are looked at as mid-card guys. Let's give them world title shots. It doesn't have to be on a pay-per-view. It could be on a Raw, but let's give them a world title shot. And let's see what they can do. Let's make them prove themselves. Kind of like what Cedric Alexander did against Drew McIntyre. He won that match, and that could hopefully be Cedric's advancement for a push in the WWE. But those are the guys. Cedric Alexander's another one, too. I think deserves a lot more than what he's been given. Moving forward, after the WWE Network showing the 10th anniversary Evolve show, do you think it's a good or a bad idea for the WWE and the network to become a hub for indie companies like Evolve, Progress, ICW, etc.? Here's the thing. The WWE showing other people's shows, it becomes a slippery slope, because then it's great for a subscription point of view, because now let's just say all of your indie wrestling that you want to see is now under one roof. That's a cool thing, but it also associates all those guys with the WWE brand, and it looks like that now all these guys are becoming feeder systems for the WWE. Whether or not that's true is irrelevant. That's the way it looks, and now it's going to open up the opportunity for more people to complain. Oh, I don't really want to see Austin Theory come off of Evolve, because if he does, the WWE is just going to bury him. Kind of negative stuff from the internet. But more importantly, it opens the WWE up to this opportunity, to this idea that they have to rely on another brand in order to get network subscriptions. And that shouldn't be the case. The WWE by itself, the network should be selling. The selling point should be all the older stuff and newer stuff that the WWE always puts out. So I think it's a good idea, but by that same point, I think that it's not 100% necessary. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see more, but I'd like to see them more as network specials and not weekly episodes. And I like the idea that the WWE guys would be going over there, NXT guys, 205 Live guys from Raw and SmackDown would be going over there and contributing on those shows. If they want to do that, that's fine, but nothing weekly. Jimmy also asked what's my favorite NXT takeover of all time. Selfishly, NXT Takeover Brooklyn 4, because I was there. And not for nothing, it was a great show. See, the opening match with the Undisputed Era versus Mustache Mountain was great. It's the first time I got to see Pete Dunne wrestle live. He wrestled on the NXT program that preceded it. It was a debut match of Deonna Purrazzo, which is great because I'm a big fan of Deonna Purrazzo's work. shown on screen multiple times, most notably if you look at when Matt Riddle debuted that night. If you really look in the background over his left shoulder, you'll see me all the way in the background going like this, so that's kind of always cool. And Adam Cole versus Ricochet was great. The street fight with Ciampa and Gargano was unbelievable. It was a great show, and it's the first and only NXT show I've ever been to, so it's always going to have a special place in my heart. And finally, Jimmy asked, who do I think is going to end up winning the G1 this year? So, I was looking at the brackets, and I realized that the A block is a lot more exciting than the B block this year. The B block, the guys who I'm looking at are guys like Jon Moxley, because, I mean, let's face it, and obviously Tetsuya Naito. Those are the two guys who I see, as like the two top guys in Block B. But the A block is really stacked. Guys like Kenta, Okada, Tanahashi, and Ospreay, all in Block A, I think really shows that New Japan Pro Wrestling is, their rosters are starting to get back to being stacked after the mass exodus of the former Bullet Club, now known as the Elite. Personally, I think that Moxley has a good chance of winning, but I can understand if they don't want to make him a big star because he's signed with AEW and they don't know what his future would be. But Kenta's always a good option as well. At the end of the day, I think it may be Kenta or Ospreay as my picks to win. But we'll see. I know it's going to be great, and I can't wait to see who wins. And again, Jimmy, thank you for everything you've done for the channel and your questions. Next, Matthew asked a good question about AEW. Do you think that AEW will stumble out of the gate with the first few episodes of Dynamite? I can see some growing pains with their production happening. From a production standpoint, AEW is nowhere near on the level of WWE. And that comes with time. WCW struggled with production stuff. There was a point where WCW accidentally played the wrong tape at WCW Saturday Night on one of their broadcasts and spoiled their pay-per-view that hadn't even happened yet. So, pretty big deal there. So growing pains do happen. This is the thing. All the money, everybody talks about AEW and, oh, Tony Khan's got all this money and, they're going to put the WWE out of business. They're not going to put the WWE out of business. They're not going to come anywhere close. What they really should be doing is looking at the WWE and looking at their production and looking at WCW and their production. And even to a point, TNA's production is actually done really well. They just don't get recognized for it. And the network that they're on right now is trash. So that's a huge deal for them. But they need to look at production and really learn how to get like the right people back there to really know how to produce a wrestling show. And, somebody brought this up on a podcast at one point. I believe it was Eric Bischoff's podcast, where he said that you can't find a cameraman to work in wrestling because it's such a different way of being a cameraman. You can't hire an experienced, 25 years experienced wrestling cameraman. They don't exist. And that's the same thing with a producer of wrestling television. I think that they're going to have a lot of production snafus in the beginning. I think that they shouldn't go live. I think they should be a pre-taped show, and I think they should work, 2 or 3 days tirelessly from start to finish to perfecting that show to iron out the wrinkles of production before they go live. That would be my suggestion for AEW. Growing pains are going to happen. If you have a tape show, you can really hide your weaknesses, accentuate your positives, and I think that's what AEW really needs to do. I think that there will be some production snafus in the beginning, but I think that eventually they'll come out of it and they'll be okay. But definitely in the beginning there will be. Jesse asks, these are the final 4 questions, and they're 4 really good questions. He asks a lot more stuff about like indie wrestling, which is something that, admittedly I'm not as up to date on as I should be. But I'm going to do my best to answer his questions, especially the first one. He asked, "Who are the top indie talents now that most of them are signed to the company contracts?" So the first thing that jumps out into my head is I watched the Evolve 10th year anniversary show on the network, and 2 people stood out to me. Actually 3 people, but one of them's not independent. He signed to NXT. I can't remember his name because they just changed it. But he's the guy who comes out in the karate gi and he's got that capoeira fighting style. He's been on the WWE Network a bunch of times under a different name. He impressed me. That match that he had with I can't remember the other gentleman's name. I'm horrible with names, just in general. So that's pretty bad for me to not remember. But that match impressed me, but they're not indie talents. The two people who really impressed me on that show, who I guess are technically indie talents, even though they may be signed to Evolve. I don't know if you know what their contract status is. It can probably be broken if the WWE wants them. Were Shotzi Blackheart and Austin Theory. I know Austin Theory is the champion, and I know that you're supposed to be impressed with him, but man, that guy can go. He can really work, and this is the first Austin Theory match I ever got the chance to see, and it was phenomenal. But man, Shotzi Blackheart stole the entire pay-per-view for me. That suicide dive through those chairs is one of the sickest bumps I've ever seen. She's got a good character. She's got good personality. She's, a handful. She's a spitfire. I know that they made her lose, but it was because of outside interference, and you can see that Brandi Lauren is still very new to the wrestling industry. I believe she's only 22, but I think Brandi Lauren could be a big deal as a manager and eventually as a wrestler. She just needs to be seasoned a little bit more. She's young, but she's got a really good look for the wrestling business. She, when you're not a wrestling fan and you show some of the women to people who aren't wrestling fans, they look at them and they're like, well, sure, she's pretty, but she's not like conventionally pretty. She's, because obviously a lot of these girls were former fitness models. They work out a lot. They're very muscular. They're very defined. And for a lot of guys, that might not be the most attractive thing to them. I've seen people say that Mandy Rose is just too muscular. But Brandi Lauren has a very good natural girl next door, girl that you see in your college that goes to the gym 5 times a week kind of a look. And I think that's a big deal. I know that, it may seem like I'm being creepy because I'm talking about women's looks, but I do the same thing about, the male superstars. A guy like, Austin Theory to me stood out because he's in great shape and he's in great physical conditioning. And I get it. JD Drake, I believe, was the guy who Austin Theory wrestled. When you see a guy who looks out of shape, even if you get the backstory, to me, I can't take him as seriously as I do a guy like Austin Theory. And it's different if his gimmick was a little bit different. But the trunks that he wears are up so high, though, like right underneath his belly button. It makes it look like he's wearing a giant black diaper. The look doesn't do it for me. Now, a guy like Bray, who might be a similar size to him, was underneath his shirt, and he looked, even when he was Husky Harris, he still looked big and built and like he worked out. You got to have a certain look. And for me, Shotzi Blackheart has a great look. I think she's phenomenal. I know that he's technically signed to MLW, but Flying Brian Pillman Jr. on my list of breakout superstars of tomorrow. I think that he's one of the guys on the indie scene who's lighting it up, who's doing it really well, who's doing a good job at living up to his father's, he grew up in his father's shadow. He's living up to that right now. I think he's going to be really good. From what I've seen of him, he's great. And obviously, always, 100%, my answer will always be until she's officially signed by a company. Tenille Dashwood should be the number one woman in any wrestling organization right now. The fact that Tenille Dashwood is not signed by WWE, NXT, Impact, Ring of Honor, AEW is mind-boggling. Tenille Dashwood needs to be locked up. She needs to be the face of somebody's women's division. She's a great athlete. She's absolutely gorgeous. She has a different look than everybody else does. She went from that, bleach, that blonde hair to now she's got this darker hair, a darker attitude. The way she's presented herself is completely different. I love Tenille Dashwood. I've loved her since she was Emma in NXT. I think she's absolutely the top person on the indies right now, and she deserves to be signed. And finally, Jesse also asked me what I enjoy most in wrestling today. Work rate. Work rate is huge right now. You can sit there and you can talk about how maybe you don't like the WWE's product, but you can't sit there and say that guys like Seth Rollins, guys like Finn Balor, guys like Finn and Nakamura put on a great match. Rollins gives it 100% every time he steps through the curtain. AJ Styles and Ricochet are tearing the house down whenever they wrestle each other. You're getting really good matches every single time. The Extreme Rules pay-per-view were filled with great matches. I really like that the WWE is really highlighting the in-ring product. And then it's not just the WWE. We're seeing AEW, the work rate with some of those matches. The Cody and Dustin match was off the chain at their first pay-per-view. I'm not a big fan of a lot of the no-selling stuff. It bothers me, and I'll continually say that until I'm blue in the face, but I don't like it. But guys like Will Ospreay has started to, get a little bit better when it comes to selling. I just like the work rate. NXT, AEW, New Japan, WWE work rate right now is at the tops. People are busting their ass more than anybody, and what I feel at any other time in the wrestling industry. We're seeing new innovative stuff. We're seeing guys do more things that we never thought to see possible. Work rate for me is right now the best thing that I'm enjoying in wrestling right now. And the final question that Jesse asked, and the final question I'm going to answer during this Q&A episode, is what are some things you enjoyed about wrestling that are not done or used anymore? Vince Russo's structure for WWE Raw is the thing I miss the most about Raw right now. What happened to the backstage interview segments where they're in front of individual locker rooms and they're not on a set? What happened to investigative journalists hunting wrestlers down to try to get a word with them, not just them walking onto a set, a pre-made set, and to a pre-made slot? Let's get a little bit more gritty with this. Let's make it seem a little bit more real. What happened to the shots of people either prior to the show starting or during the show, people arriving, and the suspense of who's going to be, who's arriving? What happened to just showing a guy walking into an arena? I'd love to just see a shot of the club walking in. Last week, Ricochet embarrassed the club. What are they going to do this week? 5 seconds. That's all I need. But it builds intrigue, and I know that something's going to happen later in the show with the club. I feel like more character work needs to get done too. I feel like the WWE is falling into this place where everybody has a name, and as cool as those names can be, Aleister Black, Damian Priest, Bray Wyatt, Finn Balor, these are cool names for wrestlers. But who are they? More character work needs to go in. Goldust was a great character. It was different. Velveteen Dream is a character. And I like that. And we need to see more of that. I like that he's not Patrick Clark, the Velveteen Dream. I like that he's just the Velveteen Dream. These are the things that I think that are major right now in wrestling. I think that we need more character work. We need more of that kind of work within the industry. Production needs to be a little bit different on the shows too. Like I said, the way Vince Russo wrote things, those are things that we don't see anymore. I think the wrestling industry really needs that. All right, so I've rambled for a half hour, and I've answered everybody's questions. So again, thank you to everyone who submitted questions. Thank you to Donnie for breaking the ice and being the first. Thank you to Elizabeth, Andre, David, Craig, Jimmy. Thank you to Matthew. Thank you to Jesse. Thank you guys for everything that you've done. Thank you guys for watching and supporting this channel. And more exciting stuff will be coming soon. If you want to have more interactive episodes like this, please comment underneath it and tell me, and we'll do more of these. I have a laptop now, so I might be able to live stream a little bit more. I'm going to see how I can set that up on my laptop in order to do so, and maybe we'll do a couple more live streams, and we can do like a live stream Q&A, and we can talk about whatever we want to talk about. I'll set apart in a half an hour, and we'll just shoot the breeze about wrestling. And yeah, more shows are going to be coming soon, so keep an eye out. Follow me on social media, facebook.com/The Slam Sessions Podcast Network. Follow me on Twitter at KYDJustice. And, please feel free to interact with me on either of those platforms and tell me what kind of shows that you want. For those of you that are watching who are in the Dave Lowe's Wrestling live stream, I promised an Aces and Eights episode too. That episode is coming. I just haven't gotten a chance to film it yet, but I'm going to be working on that next. It's going to be one of the things I'm going to be working on, but it also requires a lot of research to do to get everything, the timeline down and everything. So that's one of the things that are coming. But if there's anything else you guys want to hear me cover, please, by all means, get in touch with me and let me know. But again, thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you next time.